So, Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and purports by Srila Prabhupada. So, we're on Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So, na yatra kalo, yatra wherein there is no time, material time. Animi sham parak prabhu. Animi sham, it's an interesting word. That means the devas or the demigods. Nimisha, or nimish means to blink, to close the eyes. And so it's said that the demigods are unblinking. They don't close their eyes. So they're always wide-eyed. They can always see. So therefore, so Kala is described as Para Prabhu, a master, Para, above, superior to even the unblinking devas. And so that time, which is above even the devas, is not present there. And of course, all we have here is yatra, so we have to find out where there is. Kutonu deva. So what then of the gods? Jagatang ishire. It's actually ye, but becomes ya by Sandhi. Who rule? This is the verb. You know the word isha, Lord. So this is the verb ishire. Those who have ruled Jagatang, the worlds. Those who have ruled the worlds. So the yatra sattvam narajastamascha, wherein there is no modes of nature, no sattva, rajas, or tamas, navai vikaro, nor indeed transformation, na mahan. So mahan is just stands here for mahatattva, nor the pradhana. These are the gross, undifferentiated material nature. And then so this is actually not a this is a dependent clause grammatically, which is going to be completed by the next verse. But anyway, so we'll read this for now. Nayatra kalo nimishang paraprabhu. Everybody?
Nayatra kalo nimisham paraprabhu.
Nayatra kalo nimishang paraprabhu.
Nayatra kalo nimisham paraprabhu.
Kutonu deva jagatam ja ishide.
Kutonu deva jagatam naishiye.
Kutonu deva jagatam ja ishide.
Kutonu deva jagatam jaishire.
Yatra sattam narajastamascha.
Nayatra sattvam narajastamascha.
Yatra sattam narajastamascha.
Nayatra sattvam narajastamascha.
Navai vikaro namahan pradhanam.
Navai vikaro namaham pradhanam.
Navai vikaro namahan pradhanam.
Navai vikaro namaham pradhanam.
Yatra kalo nimisham paraprabhu.
Nayatra kalo nimisham paraprabhu.
Kutonu deva jagatam jaishire.
Kuto deva yagatam yaishire.
Yatra sattam narajastamascha.
Nayatra sattvam narajastamascha.
Navai vikaro namahan pradhanam.
Navai vikaro namaham pradhanam.
So
Na yatra kalo nimisham paraprabhu.
Na yatra kalo nimishankara prabhu.
Kuto no deva jagatam yaishire.
Tauni deva jagatam jayishire.
Na yatra sattvam narajastamascha.
Na yatra sattam narajastamascha.
Na vai vikaro namaham pradhanam.
Na vai vikaro namahan pradhanam.
Nayatra kalo nimesha. Nayatra kalo nisamparam prabhu.
Na yatra kalo nimisham paraprabhu.
Kuto na deva jagatam naishire.
Kuto nu deva jagatam jayishire.
Yatra satvam narajastamascha.
Na yatra sattvam narajastamascha.
Navaidikaro namahapadhanam.
Na vai vikaro namahan pradhanam. So, this verse has the word not 5 times, and then one indirect not, kuto, like what to speak of. So it's explaining everything that's not there on the spiritual platform. So, Prabhupada's translation, in that transcendental state of labdha upashanti. So, Prabhupada takes us to be describing the state which is indicated by the last word, or by the word of the last line of the previous verse. A state in which virameta kritya, as we explained yesterday, one can retire from, one can pull back from understood mundane duties, even cosmic mundane duties, such as obligations to the devas. So, in that transcendental state of labdhopa shanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of, that's kuto, what to speak of, and what to speak of the demigods themselves. Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the false ego, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. Hey, BT, got a seat. Got a seat for you. So, Prabhupada's purport, this is 2:217. Devastating time. It is devastating. Look what it's doing to our bodies. Devastating time, which controls even the celestial demigods by its manifestations of past, present, and future, does not act on the transcendental plane. That's very encouraging. The influence of time is exhibited by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, and disease. And these 4 principles of material conditions are present everywhere in any part of the material cosmos up to the planet Brahmaloka, where the duration of life of the inhabitants appears to us to be fabulous. Insurmountable time even brings about the death of Brahma. So what to speak of other demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Vayu, and Varuna. The astronomical influence directed by the different demigods over mundane creatures, Prabhupada calls this an astronomical influence, is also conspicuous by its absence. In material existence, the living entities are afraid of satanic influence. But for a devotee on the transcendental plane, there is no such fear at all. Don't forget that Prabhupada went to Scottish churches, college, so he probably heard a lot about Satan. And he grew up in in the British Raj. Of course, they're always trying to convert Hindus to Christianity, so probably would have heard a good deal about satanic influence. I mean, much more than we do nowadays, especially if you live in certain neighborhoods. But for a devotee on the transcendental plane, there is no such fear at all. The living entities change their material bodies in different shapes and forms under the influence of the different modes of material nature. Yes, we change our material bodies in different shapes and forms. But in the transcendental state, the devotee is gunatita. That's from the Gita. Krishna several times mentioned ati means over or beyond, and ita means gone. So atita literally means gone beyond. So gunatita, gone beyond the gunas. That's basically how Krishna says transcendental in the Bhagavad Gita, gone beyond the gunas. Because if you think transcendental, but to what? Transcendental by itself is incomplete information, because what are you transcending? So it means transcending these three modes. Because as Krishna says in the Gita, the activities, the external physical activities that we think we're doing are actually being carried out by the gunas. So if you are gunatita, it means you're beyond the gunas. It means you are beyond their mental influence. You don't have like bad Sika days, as we used to say. That's for men. Notice. In other words, you don't have bad days. You don't have. You're not driven to do things you shouldn't do. You just all these, even our moods, our so-called moods, which are not ecstatic Krishna consciousness. That's just the modes of nature. And when we can recognize them as such, and get the spiritual power to rise above them, then life is really great, actually, all the time. So, but in the transcendental state, the devotee is gunatita, or above the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Thus, the false ego of I am the Lord of all I survey does not arise there. It's funny because they say a pauper's proud of his penny. So some people, all they can survey is maybe the inside of a little room or something, or whatever. Some people don't even have that. So it's just, so what you survey depends on. But people, because they want to lord it over, even, for example, let's say someone who we would consider to be ignorant and miserable, but they can be proud. Poverty is not as we've seen, is not necessarily a bar to pride. One can be proud. One can be proud by, for example, thinking that people more intelligent than oneself or more educated are just, they're a bunch of fools. What do they know? And so everyone kind of has their strategy, or their, not even strategy, because most people are not even conscious of what they're doing. So being the Lord of all I survey, it just depends on the way you survey it and how much you're surveying. There's also what is called Gramya Matir, which is village mentality. A village mentality, which is because we know sometimes people that live in villages and hardly ever go outside their villages, so the village is all they survey. And so they have opinions about the people in the big cities, or the government and this and that. And it's funny because sometimes you find people who are, so to speak, the least cosmopolitan can be the most critical. And there's a relationship between being so critical or extremist, conservative, or sometimes on the other side, and the fact that they live in such a small world, because that's their strategy to place themselves above all the people who apparently have more money than they do, more education, more experience of the world. And so just by this little trick of, they're all the fools in the city, then they also get to lord it over all they survey. And they usually survey it in sort of unreliable media. So, Uh, in the material world, the false ego of the living being trying to lord it over the material nature is something like the moths falling in a blazing fire. The moth is captivated by the glaring beauty of the fire, and when he comes to enjoy it, the blazing fire consumes him. In the transcendental state, the living being is pure in his consciousness, and as such, he has no false ego to lord it over the material nature. Rather, his pure consciousness directs him to surrender unto the Supreme Lord, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7:19. Vasudeva sarvam iti samahatmasu durlabha. All this indicates that in the transcendental state there is neither material creation nor the causal ocean for material nature. The above mentioned state of affairs is factual on the transcendental plane, but is factually revealed in a transcendentalist knowledge of the advanced state of pure consciousness. So it's true, but you won't know it's true, or you won't perfectly realize it's true until you are on that transcendental state. Such transcendentalists are of two types, namely the impersonalists and the devotees. For the impersonalists, the ultimate goal or destination is the Brahma Jyoti of the spiritual sky, but for the devotees, the ultimate goal is the Vaikuntha planets. The devotees experience the above mentioned state of affairs by attainment of spiritual forms for activity in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. But the impersonalist, because of his neglecting the association of the Lord, does not develop a spiritual body for spiritual activity, but remains a spiritual spark only, merged in the effulgent spiritual rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is hellish. And actually, one of the great devotees of Lord Chaitanya said that, was Prabodhananda Saraswati, who said, Kaivalya, which is the impersonal oneness, Kaivalya Narakayate is actually hellish. Is actually hellish. So it's like going to hell. I mean, imagine going to a place where you're just like a spark, and you never do anything, you never feel anything, there's no relationships, there's nothing, no activities, just a spiritual spark. So it is hellish. It's like going to hell. Because if you think about it, you go to jail, your movement is limited, right? You're put in a cell, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. So it's practically like this divine imprisonment, which is actually appropriate since uh, the person that goes there rejected Krishna. What's that verse the Prabhupada always used to quote? That's where someone did not respect or did not literally did not respect Nadrata Yushmarangraya, people that did not respect your feet, your lotus feet. Nadrata Yushmarangraya did not, in other words, did not bow to you, did not submit to you. So there's something actually rebellious and envious about impersonal liberation. It's rejecting the Lord. How's that verse go? Uh, not anyway. Uh, Forgot it just now. So that's the impersonal state. So the Lord is a full-fledged form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, but the formless Brahmajyoti is simply eternity and knowledge. The Vaikuntha planets are all, and it's not even complete knowledge, of course. The Vaikuntha planets are also forms of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, and therefore the devotees, Avruya Krichena, remember it. Avruya means rising. Avruya Krichena, with a lot of trouble, which is a word Krishna uses in chapter 12 of the Gita for the impersonalists. Aruhya Krichena Param Padam Tata Patantyata. Then they fall down from Param Padam. Aruhya Krichena Param Padam Jata Patantyata Nadrata Jushmarangre. So, the Vaikuntha planets are also forms of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Therefore, the devotees of the Lord who are admitted into the abode of the Lord get bodies of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, there is no difference between one and another. The Lord's abode, name, fame, entourage, etc., are of the same transcendental quality, and how this transcendental quality differs from the material world is explained herewith in this verse. In the Bhagavad Gita, three principal subjects have been explained by Lord Sri Krishna, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. But one can reach the Vaikuntha planets by the practice of Bhakti Yoga alone. The other two are incompetent in helping one reach the Vaikuntha lokas, although they can, however, conveniently take one to the effulgent Brahmajyoti as described above. So, any questions on these points?
Oh, so many. So many on this verse. Can I?
Well,
Oh, there is this what's the name? Vikara, transformation.
yes.
So one of my eternal, doubts is that in the, in the pastimes of Krishna, which I don't know anything about, but I understand that there is relation and even the sense of time, passing and transformations are there because I'm cooking for Krishna. So I
No, but that's not the point.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
That's why the question.
the point is your identity is not transformed. For example, it's just like Krishna says in the Gita, Kumarang Jovanam Jara. One is a child, and then one gradually becomes old. Kumarang Jovanam. Actually, get rid of this. One is a child, then one becomes a youth. One matures, then one becomes old. So that doesn't happen. In other words, in this world, we take a body that becomes our identity, a certain nationality, a certain race, ethnicity, species. So your identity in the world is transformed. Your body is transformed. That doesn't happen in the spiritual world. So, material time, we should not confuse the word kala to mean let's say, a temporal medium in which events can unfold. So, actually, time in this world is a destroyer. That's what Krishna says. Arjuna says, "Who are you?" Interestingly, using the respectful form of you, Bhavan. In Sanskrit, you have the more familiar twam, and then the more formal Bhavan. So Arjuna said, "Ko Bhavan, who are you?" And I mean, you think about it, Arjuna is a good friend of Krishna. I mean, very, very intimate friend of Krishna. And then he says, "Who are you?" It's like even in this world, you can think that you know someone very well, and they do something you really didn't expect, and then you can say, like, "Well, who are you anyway?" Like I thought I knew you. So that was Arjuna's question. Ko Bhavan, Ugra Rupa, in this terrible form or in this frightening form, Ugra Rupa. And Krishna didn't say, "Well, it's just me," Govinda. Krishna said, "Kalos me, time I am, Lokakshayakrit, destroyer of the worlds." And so time in this world is a destroyer because anything that appears in this world, the final state of that object is destruction. That's not so that's what time is. It is a destroyer. Whereas time in the spiritual world is not kala, because the word kala comes from the Sanskrit root kal, which means to drive something forward, to drive it in a sense to its destiny in this case. So time is not driving you in the spiritual world. It's not destroying your so-called identity. So it's not kala. In English we say time, we have one word, but kala is a specific word for a specific power of Krishna. In fact, when Krishna glances, that famous Vedic phrase, Saiksha, he glanced over material nature, that glance is kala. And because that kala glance is destiny, if you think about it, if you have a destiny, you can't avoid it. You're just going to go there. It's going to happen to you because it's your destiny, which in Sanskrit is daiva, the will of God. Daiva means the will of God. And so from Deva. So all of that kala is not present. So That's why if you want to do serious philosophy, you have to look at the Sanskrit. It's not time which is absent in the spiritual world, it's kala which is absent.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to have time, otherwise you couldn't have events.
Yeah. So it doesn't say that time is absent in the spiritual world. It says kala is absent.
That's really interesting. Solves a dilemma.
Yeah.
So you said Daivam,
Daiva comes from the word deva,
and it means, sorry, and you were
the
using
will of God.
the will of God, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't literally mean will, but that's how it's. I mean, it's defined in its context. That's how it's used.
Mhm.
And the opposite of daiva is purushakara, which means sort of like human effort. In fact, at one point in the Mahabharata, Duryodhana complains that what is the use of purushakara? What is the use of human effort? Because daiva is just going to do everything anyway, which is also an exaggeration because we have free will. So daiva means the will of God, destiny, or in Spanish they would say fuerza mayor, which literally means the greater power. Also in Portuguese they say that força maior, the greater power. That's how you say the will of God in those languages. Italian. So much.
Free will. Thank you.
So, any other question?
Yeah, free will.
That was a really important, because it always bewildered me. How do you say there's no time in the spiritual world? It made no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's breakfast and there's lunch.
Fortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're not merged.
they're Charles Bowles.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no other questions? Okay, so stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.